Empire. The rise of in-game betting is getting more and more intricate.
We provided the odds for the League Pass team to do that. And almost 300,000 picks were made over 4 NBA final games. And people stayed almost 65% longer, which that's a beautiful stat. When you give people a way to interact with these numbers, whether it's betting, free to play, or just put it on screen, they stay longer.
That's Kelly Pracht, co-founder of nVenue, which is working for leagues and broadcasters to disseminate opportunities at lightning speed. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. When we last spoke with Kelly Pracht, nVenue was about to launch a partnership with Apple. That experience has led to more and more robust content offerings, forecasting the capability and the scope of in-game opportunity. Our guest this week is Kelly Pracht. She's the co-founder and the CEO at nVenue, which is a company that is innovating in sports using AI, a number of different in-game betting models. And last when we spoke to Kelly, there was a partnership with Apple with their rollout of Major League Baseball and how some of the products were being rolled out through that. So we wanted to do a catch-up with you, Kelly. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks so much for having me, Bram. It's really exciting to be here. Lots has been happening in the world of nVenue, so yeah, let's get started.
Let's revisit first, just overarching what nVenue does. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Sure. I like to call our company really supercompute for sports. We do predictive analytics, predicting what's going to happen in the next play or plays as the game unfolds. And we use that technology, which is heavily based in machine learning and AI. We use this lightning fast technology to put predictions on TV to complement the game, such as with Apple TV, or an MLB network. But really what I'm most excited about is how we're to package together in things that we call micro bets, which is allowing fans to interact and engage and make a pick on what they think is going to happen in the next place. And that's either really the best application is in sports betting, but it also has some free to play and fan engagement applications as well. So it's really, really exciting time in the world of predicting live sports.
To be clear, your company is not actually accepting the bets. You're doing this on behalf of whatever the party would be that would be in partnership with the broadcast. Is that correct?
Exactly right. We're the technology behind that, taking the feeds from the field and delivering the predictions in ways that our customers, which would be media, sportsbook operators, or free-to-play applications to use. We don't take the bets, but we do provide the odds.
Okay. Can you take me through kind of the growth and genesis of the company to where it is now? That's not something you turn on overnight. So can you kind of take me through the technology that allows you to give pretty clear predictive analytics for live sports in real time?
Sure thing. I've mentioned before, but kind of recap where my career trajectory took me was 7 years ago. I was leading high performance compute and supercompute technology at Hewlett Packard, and we were helping our clients solve things like simulating nuclear stockpiles. But you know what? My passion was always sports, and I wanted to apply a lot of those learnings into for me personally to enjoy the game, which is take all that beautiful data coming from the field and do something amazing with it. So the technology is really machine learning on scads of data and that real time data, and that's I think my first line of code came anywhere between, I think it was around 2016, and really just sitting and watching fans, what do they do, and trying to answer that question: how can I apply the technology that predicts things like global weather patterns? How can I apply that to predicting what a fan that's watching the game wants to know, which is what is that next thing going to happen? And I always say, like, I love the use of data for things like exit velocities and cool things that we now know. But what I wanted as a fan was to say, will Altuve hit the home run right here?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, let me ask you just a quick question because baseball changed its rules this year and sped the game
Yeah.
up. So, how did that kind of affect how you would work with Major League Baseball when they put a pitch clock and they were pretty strict about it with their pitchers?
What's really incredible to me is we honestly didn't have to change a darn thing. Our technology responded to the data as it came in. We were already fast enough, and the way our tech works is it learns over time. It learns patterns of the behavior. I call them uh, one of the side projects and things I love to look at is how we're actually seeing thumbprints of behavior with each player in any sport, but in MLB specifically. And the data just learned week over week over week and just adapted to the new rules. We didn't have to change a thing, and it's incredibly fascinating. So we're kicking off some side research projects with universities here to start looking at what we did learn and start taking deep dives into our predictions. But yeah, it was incredible. I mean, of course, with the rule changes, there was a lot more than the pitch clock, right? There was, you know, of, there was enforced balls and strikes, right, for both the batter and pitcher, but they shortened the distance between the bases and only, a handful of pickoffs. Like, lots of things happened, and we just learned and grew. The one thing we don't predict is stolen bases, and that is the one thing that if we had predicted it this past year, I think we would have seen really interesting results. But the rest, we didn't have to change a thing, and that just speaks to the maturity of our technology and how it actually grows.
Can you talk a little bit about the accuracy? I'm sure it's changed over time. What can you tell us about what you've learned about your technology as it takes in more and more data from all these different games?
Accuracy is probably it has been my number one focus for over 2 years now. And the reason is not because there's a problem with it. It's because accuracy is one of those perception things that means something different to so many. As a technologist, I would love for accuracy to mean, it's this formula and this is it. But when I talk to you as a fan, the accuracy is, did it happen right here? When I talk to sportsbook, accuracy are things like, of all the times you said 20%, translate that into odds, but of all the times you said 20%, did it happen? So I think our biggest achievement is really mapping out what accuracy is to each audience, whether it's the broadcaster, the fan, the sports book. So we've defined accuracy at incredibly deep levels, and I believe it's very groundbreaking work in order to explain how to measure and for predicting. Now, of course, we learn over time too, and as we learned these new tools to look at accuracy, we just flat out got better year over year. But that's how technology rolls. You always just get better year over year over year. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I could go on forever. If I had a whiteboard in a different world, we'd have a much longer conversation.
I mean, I'm a huge sports fan. You clearly are a huge sports fan. I also like not knowing what's going to happen. So do you know too much?
What's interesting is, one of the things that we put our numbers in front of millions of people through the last 2 seasons at Apple TV. And what was I love to talk about what we learned from that and the perception of fans. What's so cool about that is everybody responded so radically differently. Many people loved it. A few people didn't like it. Some people ignored it. But it's a whole new world. What was very common across avid fans, casual fans, all of that. People who loved it, people who didn't, was people were talking about the numbers and wanted to understand what's going to happen. What does it mean when the number went from 15% to 20% with a pitch? What does that mean, and how do I interact with that? And that's the next. I think that's the next set of problems to solve, is to give play-by-play announcers a better way to interact with that, and fans a better way to answer those quick questions on, wow, what does that mean? Because as I mentioned, the thumbprint behind what we're sharing, it's gorgeous. It's like every time we look at it, it's like we do these things called anatomy of plays and within our team, and we break it down, and we're like, wow, that is so cool. We found that Francisco Lindor always behaves this way on an 0-2, and it changes how you look at things.
That's interesting. So take me through the partnership a little bit, because you perked up my attention. I'm a play-by-play broadcaster, and when you said how we get this type of information, we're inundated with a number of different data points that we can use at various times during the games. What have you learned through the partnership as you try to not only supply the information, but make it something that is useful within the broadcast?
I think that right now, I think that's our industry gap, not necessarily an nVenue gap, but helping you guys, you folks, really be able to make sense of that and to say it's because Francisco Lindor does this, and that's my personal next big achievement as we move through this whole entire process. But we learned, a number of announcers have had interaction time and maybe scratching their head, why did it do that? The data always is there, but we know you guys are inundated. By the way, that whole little explanation has to happen in 2 seconds or less
in
order to use it.
That's right.
Yeah, and we don't want to catch folks like you off guard. That's the worst thing that we can do. So now this is outside of sports betting and outside of free to play, but that's a personal passion of mine because it's unsolved right now.
Yeah. I mean, this is in the weeds, but I'm now curious because I do this for a living. Are you preemptively alerting broadcasters to, in these situations, you will see these types of data points and metrics, or have you kind of not taken that leap yet? Like that Lindor stat is something that if I knew before the game, if he gets in that scenario and I'm going to see it, it's flagged for me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And like I said, that's the beauty of what we're doing is like there's so many more applications, and I do think that understanding those things and understanding, like when Steph is on the court, the next, the probabilities of who's going to get the next 15 points or who's going to be on a run is radically different. Or, there's stories behind this data, and now when we can get that to you in 2 seconds and you can use it to tell fans, we've got a win-win. And I predict, being a predictive analytics company, I predict that's coming in the next couple of years, Brom, but that is one of the problems that we only solve when we work with people like you and understand your thought process.
Yeah.
And so every time I run into a play-by-play announcer, I mean, I ran into at a Mavs game this year where we've been working with the NBA with Launchpad, and we had some access to go and study the data, and we spent a lot of time at Mavs games, and I ran into Chuck Cooperstein, and in the hall, I'm like, tell me this. What do you think about this? And it's a place we need to go. But what we're trying to solve here with you is no different than what we're trying to solve, even for sports betting. As you put up a probability, as you put up this group of probabilities, which it really turns into odds. It's got a little bit of margin or juice on top of that, but these probabilities turn into odds, and we're giving fans a way to agree or disagree, which is what they want to do. And what was so gorgeous about the learnings with Apple TV is fans want to engage with the data. They want someone to get more and someone to answer those questions. And when we did the same thing, it wasn't the same thing. When we did our NBA Launchpad program, which has been this past year in our partnership with the NBA, we put up these same probabilities, obviously for basketball now, not baseball, but who's going to get the next 15 points? Because the NBA is a game of runs, which is what our partnership with the NBA taught us. Hey, look, fans watch this way. It's a game of runs, and who's going to get like the next set of points is really what fans are looking for, and it might be regardless of the actual score. Like we all knew Denver was going to win, but Miami had these short bursts, so we put it on screen. And for the International League Pass with the NBA, hey, would you like to predict? And thumbs up, thumbs down. And over almost 80,000 people or user sessions jumped in and said, yeah, I want to predict. And we put up these probabilities, just like with Apple TV, of who's going to be first to get the 15 points for this particular point in the game. And our probabilities adjusted, just like with baseball, with pitch by pitch, but with basketball, with every possession change, with every, and they simply, said, oh, I think it's going to be Miami, or I think it's going to be Denver, and they locked in one or the other, and just sat there and watched the odds change until the 15 occurred, and then they either won or lost. Nothing was given. It was just like little green, hey, you won, or little red, hey, you didn't lose. Want to predict again? And people stayed 65% longer. We took almost 300,000 of those particular little bets. We didn't, but we provided the odds for the League Pass team to do that. And almost 300,000 picks were made over 4 NBA final games, and people stayed almost 65% longer, which that's a beautiful stat. When you give people a way to interact with these numbers, whether it's betting, free to play, or just put it on screen, they stay longer and they talk more. And it's the next trend in our industry.
That's really interesting. I mean, like when you talk about baseball or say golf, you're shot to shot, pitch to pitch. There's all these different analytics that are going to pop up, and you're putting predictions on these outcomes in that moment. I've never really thought of the NBA that way, that you could put a predictive model on a segment of time. Was that something that you and nVenue came up with? Did the NBA ask for that? How did that kind of materialize? Because that's a brilliant way to think about segmentation and keeping engagement.
Oh, wow. It was so incredible what we did with the NBA. We cleared the slate on expectations of what, if we were just sportsbook focused only, we would probably have entered that whole thing saying, okay, the bets out there today are, what is the next basket going to be? Is it going to be a 2-point made? Like they're dry. They're not relevant to the game. It's just a bet. It's a bet slip. And when we sat down with the NBA and when they picked us to do this effort and design these micro bets with them, we all got the slate clean and we said, how do fans watch? If we can lock in on how fans are watching, we can lock in on how they would bet and engage. And we said, the NBA said, hey, nVenue, NBA is a game of runs. And we said, interesting. What's the most logical game of runs? So we designed a whole suite of micro bets that's based on, first of all, the races, but a different type of race than what anybody else is doing. It's just, here we are, the next 15. But we also designed 4-minute cadences, because you can keep anybody engaged for 4 minutes. So over the next 4 minutes, what's going to happen with the score, or how many of this are going to happen? Then all of a sudden, you're invested in that 4 minutes and you got something to root for that's radically different. And whether Denver's blowing away Miami at that particular point or Miami's on a tear, it doesn't matter. You're invested, and it really paid off. And that's what we're doing with every sport. Like you figure out how a fan watches, what a fan is thinking. You're an expert at this, obviously. But when you can lock into that, then we stop having these irrelevant, dry bet slip engagements that don't make any sense. And it turns into part of the game, which that's why I founded the company back in 2018, and that's why I started coding in 2015 and 16 to do this, because I wanted true engagement in the sport I'm watching. And it takes freaking big tech to do that. But when we get it right, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I see the crossover for the NFL or college football easily in a drive-to-drive type of situation, because it is a game of momentum as well. And these are also, in general, 2-minute to 10-minute segments of time where people would be invested in an outcome and not just play to play. Will this be a pass? Will this be a run? Who will it go to, et cetera? It's what will the outcome be? Will they punt? Will they score a touchdown? Like, I think there's a lot there. And that's an interesting viewpoint, because most of the in-game betting that we've run into when we talk to everybody is very, as you put it, dry. Is he going to make this free throw? Is he going to get up and down? Is this pass going to be completed? And that's it. And it's just very moment to moment to moment, as opposed to segmentation of it.
Yeah. And that's where we're different by tech to what fans want. And it's because we're asking the question in a different way.
Yeah.
Now we signed a partnership with NASCAR to go develop micro bets for them for in race. You know what? There are no in race bets today. And so we're applying that same thought process into a totally new sport for us. And it all starts the same way. We went to Daytona. We've been going to races. We've got subject matter experts, and we're breaking it down into an engineering problem, which is a whole different story and very fun. But it comes down to, how are fans watching? What are they actually thinking in these moments? And that's the secret sauce. When you can turn that into what works for a fan, you have gold. And we've got a long way to go. Just like it's not an eternity to go, but just like we talked about with play-by-play announcers, with arming you guys with something that really makes sense.
Yeah.
And to be able to explain it, we also have to be able to arm the sportsbook operators to be able to offer what makes sense. In addition, instead of just giving them, I've said it before, and I think, in one way it sounds very exciting, but it also sounds terrifying to the folks who have to do this. We can put out in baseball quite easily 10,000, 15,000 micro bets per game. I mean, that's astounding, right? Can you imagine scrolling through that garbage? That's not right. But having one person pick those micro bets for the millions of fans watching. We talked with one NFL team last year, and they said, wow, it'd be really cool to put this up in our stadium. But you know what? We only want to put positive. I'm not going to give you the team name. We only want to put positive,
right?
Insert mascot predictions and interactions up on our screen. And it's absolutely, you don't want to say hey, the odds of getting a first down here are 5%, you guys, boo. So there's a whole bet curation aspect that's also coming to be able to take those 15,000 things that we're predicting and to bubble up the right stuff for the right audience. And I guarantee you, from what you find interesting is valid, obviously, because of your career to millions of people, but it's not necessarily what I find interesting.
That's right.
And the next even 3 clicks down into sports betting is going to be showing me what is interesting to me, and to you what is interesting to you, because fans are illogical and loyal and passionate and not always necessarily driven by the numbers. I desperately wanted the Astros to win in Game 7 the other night, and I would have sat there and picked all right, this is going to happen here, and it might not have been logical, but it's what I want to happen, and we got to realize that too.
Okay, so all right, so last thing then. So next level for sports betting operators sounds like there is just this vast array of opportunity. What I like and what you like that would be of interest to me might be different. And what their algorithms are going to figure out how to profile the things that you may have more interest in to offer that opportunity to the customer. Is that kind of what you see happening here too?
That is the ultimate goal, absolutely. And our tech already does this, by the way. We already rank those things and sort those things. That's part of some of our secret sauce. But when it comes to these micro bets, we're just plugging in the electricity to the house and starting to get the lights on. But and getting the operators, it's still, I wouldn't say we're in the quote unquote first inning, but we're marching along. It's still early for a lot of them, but it won't be long before we start seeing those personalizations. I would predict probably about a year out, we're going to start seeing a little bit more personalization as all of these operators start to learn how to pull in microbets. And we're integrating our microbets right now for some international operators as we speak, and it's a big effort to get operators to put in this whole new type of technology on their staff. And we've got other problems to solve too, challenges to face, and that's subjects like integrity and timing and pairing it with video, the whole latency stuff. So in addition to curation, this is one of the most powerful tech challenges and fun seasons of my career that's happened to date. So
Kelly Pracht is the CEO at nVenue. thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
On the next Future Sport podcast, the future of ticketing is also expansive.
My sincere hope, and I think this will come true in the near term, is that terminology like primary and secondary actually goes away. And you just refer to a universal ticket ecosystem. And there's a lot happening, a lot of which we're at the forefront in. But for now, you're starting to see a lot more price volatility on the secondary, variability on the secondary.
That's Stu Hallberg, CEO of Logitix, which specializes in the modern ticketing marketplace. That will do it for this episode. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein.